Game over, man. Game over. Johnny.
You're gonna need a big approach. So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for March 24, 2025, and I am JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Thanks for joining us, everybody, for this conversation. Brendan, do you have any idea how hard it is for male ducks to lay eggs?
Must be very difficult. I'll tell you, Daffy looked really constipated in this movie.
He did. He absolutely did. Look, I am very much looking forward to getting into this film. The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie. This is the first original feature-length animated film for Looney Tunes. Is that wild?
That's astounding.
In the entire history of Looney Tunes, it took until the year of our Lord 2025 for a full-on feature-length film. That is insane.
Let's think about this for a second, because Looney Tunes, I think, first appeared in, what was it, 1930? I think it was. Looney Tunes have almost been a thing for 100 years.
Almost 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely insane. And it took 95 years to get their first solo feature-length movie.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've been in other movies before, most notably from my childhood, Space Jam. I love Space Jam.
I like Space Jam.
I will defend the hell out of that movie.
Looney Tunes Back in Action, I was a big fan of as well. The Joe Dante film with Brendan Fraser.
Yes, and that's another good one. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but those don't count, because what we're talking about here is a fully animated Looney Tunes adventure as a pure Looney Tunes adventure feature.
As an original movie. Yeah. Because there's been other features, but they were collections of shorts that already existed that they just stitched together into feature-length form.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the first original animated feature that is its own singular concept.
More of these, please. More of these, please.
Yeah. And this almost didn't happen because, as we've joked a couple of times in recent weeks and months, Warner Brothers does not like movies. Mm-hmm. They're in the movie business and they hate movies. I don't understand it, but that's the world we live in. And they dumped this film.
Yeah, they did. They did.
And if it was not for Ketchup Entertainment, our beloved heroes in recent weeks, Ketchup Entertainment, they saved this film. They distributed it.
Yeah.
And man, I am hoping, fingers crossed, that this makes them money. Really want this to
I hope so as well.
Warner's face.
Because I think this only has a budget of around $15 million.
Yeah,
so
only 15. Yeah,
which is great.
Crazy.
We love seeing that. I think it's about halfway to that budget point, box office wise. So it still has a bit of a ways to go. But I do at least want to see this get enough word of mouth where Ketchup Entertainment sees more opportunities to leverage Looney Tunes. Because from what we're hearing, they may be the ones to pick up Coyote versus Acme as well, if I'm not mistaken.
That's why they were in the news last week as well. Yeah.
Which I want to see that movie. That looks really intriguing to me.
No, I agree. I cannot, if they're able to save that and this does well for them, man, live, they're going to hit the zeitgeist. And
Looney Tunes are indeed back in action.
They are indeed back in action. That is like, I don't know how many theaters that this film went to. That's the one piece of information I've been trying to find. I probably should have looked this up beforehand. So I don't know how many theaters it's gone to, but you are right. Currently, the film sits at $8.7 million worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
If it's able to have somewhat of a decent run, perhaps kind of a slow trickle effect, perhaps it can get to the budget, oversee its budget.
It might be on track at this point, because I think when it first opened in just over 2,800 theaters. I don't know if it's still playing in 2,800 theaters. It could have expanded a little bit since then. I think it was projected to hit around 3 million within those 2,800 theaters and ended up grossing around 3.2. So
Because it's been 2 weeks, right? As we're recording this, we're a little bit late to it. I think it's been 2 weeks.
Yeah, we
Well,
are a
it's
little bit
domestic
late.
run anyway.
Yeah, but what we figured with Cowdy versus Acme being in the news and just the overall news of Looney Tunes being removed from Max and what Warner Brothers is doing there, we figured we needed to at least talk about this because Looney Tunes were in the news.
Yes, exactly. Looney Tunes in the news, and also this was getting positive word of mouth.
Yeah,
people were surprised by this film, and I think also given the historical context we laid out earlier. It felt necessary to give this one a go. And we're in March where we have a lot of time to catch up on other things as it is. It feels appropriate to give this one a go. I mean, it's the first Looney Tunes movie, animated feature, which is incredible. So
probably a silly question to ask you, but outside of movies like Space Jam or Looney Tunes Back in Action, you watched Looney Tunes growing up, didn't you?
all the time.
Okay.
It was everywhere. Like our generation, it was impossible to avoid because it was
Cartoon
all over
Network.
Saturday
They
morning.
played that. Yeah, it was Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. That was what they always played.
Exactly. Yeah. You lived under a rock if you were not watching those cartoons. Simply,
They're so good.
You could not avoid it. Could not avoid it. So you grow up on Looney Tunes. I mean, that's why a movie like Space Jam works. Because, especially for me, I grew up a big sports fan. Michael Jordan is in his heyday. It's the mid-90s.
Yeah.
And they're doing a movie with Michael Jordan and Looney Tunes. That was like two of the biggest things from my childhood coming together. And it's an awesome movie. Yes, I will die on that hill. It's great.
I like Space Jam. Space Jam 2, not so much, but Space Jam is good.
Yeah, the OG Space Jam is fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, you love that movie because you grew up on Looney Tunes and you love the Looney Tunes cartoons for sure. All right. With all of that said, let's go ahead and dig into this one. It is directed by Pete Braungart and it stars Eric Baza, Candy Milo, and Peter McNichol. It really is, it's mostly those three. There are a few others that come and go throughout the film. I guess I should also mention Fred Tatasciore. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but Farmer Jim, we'll talk about him. Farmer Jim has a fun little presence here, and he also voices the scientist in the back half of the movie. All right. If you're not familiar with The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, it is about Porky Pig and Daffy Duck. They are Earth's only hope when facing the threat of an alien invasion. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Let's get loony. What did you think about
loony? Yeah.
The Day the Earth Blew Up?
And they use that word loony a lot in this movie.
They do.
I guess we should also note that this is technically an extension of the rebooted series Looney Tunes cartoons that I think debuted in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Peter Braungart was the kind of the developer of that.
Yeah, he spearheaded that. Yeah.
Yeah. So but I want to use that carefully because to call this an extension of that rebooted series makes it seem like a new version of Looney Tunes. It really isn't. It's still very much in keeping of what Looney Tunes always was, and I guess always will be over the course of now nearly 100 years. Even this pairing of Daffy Duck and Porky Pig, I think they first appeared together in 1937. And they were always one of my favorite pairings. Looney Tunes was always known for their oddball pairings. I know a lot of people tend to cite Bugs Bunny and Daffy as probably the most infamous, maybe the one that's the most celebrated of them all. That pairing never worked for me as much as Porky Pig and Daffy Duck. And I think because the opposites of them was always so attractive to me. The fact that they were so different from each other. Bugs and Daffy were kind of similar. Like they had similar levels of cynicism in a way. But this specific pairing was one of my favorites, and it's honestly why I kind of love this movie. It's very nostalgic in a way that is certainly attractive for us that grew up watching Looney Tunes. And I think just in a general sense, it's kind of nice to go back to an animated movie like this that just feels so old-fashioned. It has a crassness to it, a crudeness to it, and it's also not afraid to get politically incorrect, which I absolutely loved. This is a PG rated movie, if I'm not mistaken, but it's a pretty hard PG movie. There are individual moments here where, and admittedly, I was the only one in the theater, unfortunately, when I saw this one, but I was laughing pretty loudly. I'm sure the people working in the theater heard me. There's one joke in particular where Porky and Daffy are basically, the essence of the story is that they're about to lose their farm, and they have to find money in order to save their farm. And one of the things Porky asks Daffy, do you know what we need to do now? And Daffy says, wait for our stimulus check. It's just like the writing here is pretty clever. And there are many moments like that, which means I'm going to enjoy rewatching this one. I'm willing to bet I didn't pick up on everything. So I was really happy with this one. It's one of my favorite films of the year so far. I'm not sure if it'll end up in my 5 when we get to our mid-year report in June or July. But I really enjoyed this thing. I had a smile on my face the whole time.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was utterly delightful. And you're right. I think a lot of it comes down to that dynamic of Daffy Duck and Porky Pig. I love Daffy and Bugs as well. But you're right. That dynamic, it is just different. It's different. Yeah. Daffy and Bugs, I think it's great, but it really is two characters with similar-ish egos that constantly butt heads.
Yeah, which is the charm of
works great. Absolutely. Daffy and Porky, it's just a completely different dynamic altogether. They are totally opposites in every sort of way, which is why their chemistry, their camaraderie also really works. And man, it is lovable absurdity in this film. And I love how the looniness of this film tethers to its retro sci-fi aesthetic and story. Like this is a B movie straight out of the 1950s, which is really fun. There is this retro comedic energy to it that works immaculately for the Daffy Porky dynamic and comedic backbone that they thrust into this film. And it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. There's a million jokes a minute, but they're all really great. The energy is endless. And they end up throwing in this third character, this romantic interest for Porky Pig.
Yeah, Petunia. Love Petunia Pig.
Petunia Pig. And how she kind of disrupts that dynamic in these fun and interesting ways, I think is also really great. So yeah, I mean, this is a film that it's able to wonderfully examine or kind of it disrupts that friendship. And I love how they set up that Daffy and Porky are these adopted brothers of sorts.
I love
Farmer
that.
Jim is one of my favorite characters of the year so far. Like the rendering of him, how he is,
the way he walks,
the way he walks, it is so good.
And then they turn him into straight up Mufasa.
Exactly. I was just about to bring that up. He basically becomes Mufasa in the sky in this incredible way. And I think the brilliance of the film is that it is obviously very loony. It is goofy as all get out. There's so much fun to be had, but there's also a sincerity and a poignancy to that friendship, to that brotherhood between them. It doesn't give that too much weight, but there's enough of it to counterbalance a lot of the comedic looniness that we see, which I think is really great. So like the setting that up, I think is really important. That pays off phenomenally at the end of the film. That moment there on the asteroid is so good. So like I love the balancing of this film in that regard. And man, there's just so much fun to be had. And this is a film that is, I mean, to Brennan's point, it is politically incorrect at times. It's also very self-referential. This is very meta. There's a couple of times Daffy looks directly into the camera and it's talking directly to the audience, as you might expect.
Of course, an audience member, like or a silhouette of an audience member, gets up and walks out at one point.
Good. I love that. That was one of my favorite gags of the film, for sure.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, just a lot of fun. I enjoyed the hell out of this.
But this movie does still have some things on its mind. You did mention that it is very self-referential, which I did love about this whole experience. There's a review on Letterboxd for this movie. It's by Joel Mayward, who writes for Cinema Ward, if I'm not mistaken, or Cinema Y Ward. And what he wrote was, this reminded me of various times of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Thing, Armageddon, The Emperor's New Groove, Dumb and Dumber, and Twin Peaks. So it's good. That's basically what he wrote. And yet it does have varying ingredients like that. And it feels very lovingly pulled from these different avenues. The plot of this movie is essentially a combination of Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Thing. And then the final act is straight up Armageddon. So I can certainly understand those comparisons. But the movie utilizes those plot comparisons to, I guess, weirdly say something about the nature of Hollywood nowadays and how Looney Tunes really came from a different era, and it's trying to hold on to the oldness of where it stemmed from. There are lines in this movie, mostly spoken by Petunia, where she calls this product that they're working on at this manufacturing plant that manufactures gum. She calls it unimaginative and generic, and it turns these chewers into zombies. This movie's totally talking about modern Hollywood. It absolutely is. And it's using older movies that don't carry that stigma as a way to convey that message even further. It might not be the most insightful message, but coming from something like Looney Tunes that predates this movement of Hollywood, I think is very appropriate. And I think it has a lot of fun with that. It's very biting, but it's not too biting to the point that it's overly cynical. It does find that line and straddles it very well.
No, I completely agree with you on that point. That element of the film is so noticeable, and honestly, it's a big reason why this film is so diverting. That playful commentary, as obvious as it might be, but yeah, the generic product that they are putting out, turning them into these zombies, and there is a lot of irony. I mean, obviously you can formulate that idea around modern Hollywood, broadly speaking. I mean, we just got done talking about Snow White and the disaster that film is. Disney is by no means, I mean, they're one of the biggest culprits when it comes to this. But I do love the irony specifically here with Warner Brothers, who's just as bad. They wanted
they're just as complicit.
They wanted to get rid of this movie. It's like they understood that this film was about them, and that's why they tried to scrap it, which might be true for all we know, because that studio is ran by someone who truly hates film. One of the more egregious studio heads we've seen in Hollywood in a long, long time.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't think it would surprise any of us if he saw or at least heard what this film was about and it irritated him. And so, like, as a personal vendetta, he tried to get rid of this film.
Let's give him a little bit of credit for recognizing that, because Disney did something similar with the Dumbo movie directed by Tim Burton, and they did not pick up on the joke. But at least
that's true. Or to give Disney credit, they did and released that film anyway, knowing that Tim Burton was kind of making fun of Disney. I don't know.
I'm not willing to give him that much credit.
I don't know if I am either, but that is an interesting thing to weigh, I guess. Because I don't know. Disney might not be that smart. I don't know if Zazov's that smart or aware either.
But he does seem like the kind of person that would take a personal offense.
He would take a personal offense to this.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what this film is doing. It is commenting on the modern Hollywood slot machine and the generic gum that they put out for everyone to chew on to turn them into zombies, and the irony that this is all funneled through the prism of the type of film we would get 70 years ago, or from a Looney Tunes perspective, almost 100 years ago, and really playing up the old school filmmaking, which adds another irony when you understand that this film only costs $15 million. When
I love
modern animated films cost over
Yeah.
$200 million to make.
Yeah, this is
It's
so on
crazy.
the cheap. It's so on the cheap, and I love that it still retains that old-fashioned sensibility. I mean,
Yeah,
there
this
is
is a full two-dimensional animated film. I mean,
Yeah.
when was the last time we got that?
It's been a long time. Now there is still, a cleanness to this one, maybe more of a process look to it when compared to, let's say, the graininess of even something like Space Jam, for instance.
Yeah,
But
that's
that's
fair.
that's just
Yeah.
par for the course. But that's not really. I feel like that's not as much of a deliberate choice as it is just the technology that they're working with nowadays.
Yeah.
But it still feels of a piece with what Looney Tunes always was, which is why I wanted to call this out as an extension of this rebooted Looney Tunes cartoon, because it could have had every opportunity to change things up to make it more modern in a way that didn't feel like it worked. And it still holds on to what made Looney Tunes Looney Tunes. And this movie does the exact same thing. The sense of humor has not changed. The political incorrectness of it still hasn't changed. The way that certain female characters are depicted in this movie takes me back to what they used to do. Let's just say they're big-breasted, to say the least.
Yeah, the animation of that character did take me back at first. There's no doubt about that.
and the way that character's arc crystallizes in the mid-credit scene is pretty bad, and I kind of respect it for going there. It's very rare for a movie like this, let alone a PG-rated movie, to go that route.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I love about it as well, and this I think has a contemporary parallel as well, and that is the idea, the paranoia, the fear of the outsider. I want to be careful here not to get into too many spoilers, but given the nature of this film, there is an alien invasion. Again, going back to the retro 1950s sci-fi feel of it.
Yeah.
The plotting of the film is an alien is coming toward Earth, and there is some paranoia, at least from Daffy's perspective, that this alien is up to something. Now, given how things play out, I do love the subversive nature of the film to essentially get to the idea that our panic, our paranoia, the way that we portray villains in the immediacy might not be what the actual truth is. That maybe a lot of that is simple propaganda. And we should try to discover what that truth is before coming to conclusions. I do love how the film plays on that from a narrative perspective, from a comedic perspective. There's so much from that perspective, from that angle of it, from a writing perspective, that is great in the context of this film. But I think thematically, and how that in a lot of ways has political stakes with the way we look at outsiders. And by we, I mean certain individuals, the way they look at outsiders and immediately they see them as a threat. When in reality, they're far from being a threat. Like, this is a film that comments on that as well in a really clever way that, again, works in the context of the film, but also thematically is kind of biting as well.
It seems to know that too, because it plays into that subversion very directly. It's very clearly trying to trick the audience with that, which many movies do in their own way, but this movie seems very self-aware of that as a thematic idea, like you're talking about. I think you make a really good point. It's really trying to trick the audience into that notion that, okay, we are supposed to see this entity, this creature of sorts, as this very thing, only to then tell you were wrong. And it very directly tells you were wrong in a very, very funny way. When you find out what this alien's goals actually are, what its what resource it's trying to mine, we'll simply say.
Yeah.
It is one of the most irreverent things I've seen in any comedy in a long
Yeah.
time. And I loved it.
Oh,
Absolutely
it's so
loved it.
good. Yeah, no, it's really great. Like, it's for all of the astute writing of the film and the great jokes of it. I love how it's able to, play up the Hollywood angle as we talked about earlier, and also poke fun, but also recognizing the perhaps absurdity appropriately, because this is a Looney Tunes movie, the absurdity of xenophobic tendencies that we have in our society. And so this is a film that wants to blow that, or like take those fears, how we blow that out of proportion and use it to its advantage in a loony kind of way.
Sure.
And it's great. It's really great. And again, you couple that with not just the Hollywood stuff, but as we talked about earlier, the dynamic of Porky and Daffy and how all of that works. Like, for a slick film like this, that's 90 minutes, I think. There are some sophisticated layers to this film. Like, it's honestly doing some really incredible work.
That's the other thing I wanted to ask you too, because one of the things that worried me the most about the movie walking into it was that it was a full-on Looney Tunes movie, the first ever, which is weird to say still.
Yeah.
And it is an hour and a half long. My worry was that it was going to feel too long, because there is something to be said about Looney Tunes working best when it is brief and very vignette-like and episodic, if you will.
Yeah, because there's a lot of energy to it, and there's a million jokes a minute that could weigh on you after a while. And that admittedly was a concern, especially when you're 25 minutes into the film and you're like, man, we've already had 2,000 jokes. This is running at the speed of the Roadrunner.
I did not feel bothered by this runtime, because there is still a narrative supporting it. It is, it does kind of still carry that, that joke by joke vignette style, but it's still being supported by a narrative arc that's taking you somewhere. It still has an establishing first act and a rising action, then a conflict and a falling action. It's still following the blueprint of what a narrative should do. So it ultimately still works. And I never found myself tired, or I don't think the film overstays its welcome at all.
Well, no, and that's because it is introducing all of these layers that we've been talking about, whether it be the gum factory, the allegory to Hollywood, the xenophobia with the alien, how the alien is involved here, the central relationship, how that evolves, Petunia, how she disrupts that relationship, how she caused some friction. And that is a big element for the third act of the film, right? Where Porky doesn't trust Daffy. And why would you? The man is a duck of chaos. And all he does is
he's the duck of
thing.
death. The duck of death.
Yeah. And which is why, that points back to the joke I did to open this whole episode, where Porky wants him to stay back at the house to lay eggs. And he's like, I'm a male duck. How am I supposed to do that? And the reason Porky does it, because he doesn't trust him. Like, the stakes are really high. Him and Petunia have to go out and save the world. So, like, there is some friction there, but the way the film utilizes that to then lead to the asteroid moment at the end is so really great. So you have all of these comedic flavors working together, but it's still balancing that out with this tender, relationship between Porky and Daffy in these great ways. And all of that accumulates to a movie where you're never tired by one thing or the other, because it does have all of these great layers that are working together very well.
Yeah, this movie rocks. This movie rocks.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, I love the way that it comments on certain storytelling things as it goes. Like, one of my favorite gags is somewhat near the end of the film when they're trying to come up with a plan and they're trying to figure out what to do. And we go back to Farmer Jim, and Porky's trying to remember their childhood and all the good times that he had with Daffy. And Daffy like snaps him out of it. Is like, what are you doing? Having a flashback?
Yeah,
And it's just a really great
there's
joke.
that. There's a moment, I think in maybe the first third or somewhere around the midway point, where there's a clear moment of foreshadowing, and then the word foreshadowing just pops up on screen.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I love how the film is very, very aware of what it's doing, and it just brings the audience right into that. And yeah, there's a lot of fun. So like that Looney Tunes esque energy, it is vibrant, it is vigorous, but it's not overwhelming because it does bring in all of these other things to kind of balance that out. So I think the time is perfect. I think it is very well paced, and 90 minutes is what it was great here.
I want
Looks
more
great.
of these. I want more of these. So I
Yeah.
do hope we get to see Coyote versus Acme, because Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, another one of my favorite pairings. Certainly one of the more classic pairings for sure. But I want to see more of these different pairings. Make full length movies out of them. Things like this. It doesn't have to be Daffy and Porky every time. Heck, I'd even see something between Bugs and Yosemite Sam, or Sylvester
Sure.
and Tweety, another one of my favorites, which is basically the Looney Tunes version of Tom and Jerry in a way.
Yeah.
I would love to see this continue. I hope it does well.
I hope it does well. We shall see, as it will hopefully stay in theaters for a few more weeks and make its money there. I imagine at some point soon, I think we talked about this on the main show this last weekend, if I remember correctly, but sometimes a movie will do well on the VOD market. I could see this doing well on, through the VOD market. Maybe that's where it starts to make up the theatrical gap a little bit, and maybe when it's all said and done, it makes its money back, which would be a great success for this film. And if it ends up streaming somewhere, probably won't be on Max, but wherever it ends up streaming,
In a way, I
don't know
hope
if
it's not
Ketchup
on
has
Max
their
at this
own,
point.
but yeah. But hopefully people go and check it out, because it's absolutely worth your time. 100% worth your time.
I agree. Really good stuff. Great to
So-
see a movie like this.
Yes. Any other final thoughts that you have?
No, I loved it. I will say, as a romance, it's actually really charming as well. We didn't really talk as much about the romantic
Yeah, the romance is
kinship
great.
between Porky and Petunia. And Petunia Pig is also another character that's appeared in Looney Tunes cartoons for quite some time as well. She's not foreign to just, she's not just for this movie. But I do like the connection between her and Porky in this movie. I think it's quite great.
Yep, I loved all of that as well. As far as a final thought for me, I'm not going to give it away in case people are listening to this and haven't seen the film. Although at this point we've already spoiled a lot of the jokes and and everything. So apologies if you haven't seen it.
We spoiled some of the jokes, but I mean, there's probably at least
There are-
1,500 more in here.
There's a lot of jokes. I guess I'll keep it vague, but if you've seen the film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The reveal at the end with Farmer Jim. Again, I love Farmer Jim, how he comes back, Mufasa in the sky.
Yeah.
And the discovery of what's on the back of the photo, I thought was just the perfect way to end this film.
So stupid, but I love
so
it.
dumb. But I was like, I love a clever contrivance like that. But it's just, again, it's loony. That's just the only way to describe it. But
Well, yeah, the movie knows it's a contrivance.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's having a lot of fun with it. So yeah, I enjoyed the heck out of this. I enjoyed it a lot. Hopefully I
Me
can
too.
get the kids to give this a spin once it comes out on streaming, because I think they'll like it a lot.
I do wonder how kids today will react to something like this.
And that's a good question, because my kids, for example, they have not grown up on Looney Tunes. It's not been
Right.
something that's a part of their like their appetite as far as consumption goes, entertainment consumption.
Yeah.
And there's, like kids today are so, like there's so many more options, whether it be movies and TV shows, and you got YouTube itself, like kids YouTube has so much to offer. And then you got, Disney Plus and all of these streaming services, that kids can just watch whatever they want. And
Yeah.
I don't know, they're not like when we were kids, the options were a little less limited or more limited, I should say. There was less to
they're
choose
more
from.
limited. Yeah. We had a smaller sliver of things to pick from. And a lot of times it was always Cartoon Network, and Looney Tunes were all over Cartoon Network when we were growing up.
Yeah. Which makes me wonder what Andrew, what they're going to be like. Like, are they gonna have their version of this when they get older? And I don't even know what that'll be because their childhood entertainment is just so different than mine. Like I grew up watching Transformers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Looney Tunes, of course.
Yeah.
Andrew and Sam haven't watched any of that. Like none of that.
In my case,
whatsoever.
I grew up watching a lot of Nickelodeon, so I watched a lot of Nicktoons, Rugrats, Rocko's Modern Life,
Rugrats
Hey Arnold.
as well, yeah.
So in like at least with those examples, do your kids even know what those are?
Nope. No
Wow.
idea. No idea.
Wow.
No, like Sam grew up watching PJ Masks and Paw
Okay.
Patrol. Like they had that Paw Patrol movie not that long ago, but
Right.
he had outgrown it at that point, so we didn't go see that. I don't know if like in another 30 years, if there's a Paw Patrol reboot, if he's going to be interested in going to see that. I don't know. And I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm just talking out loud. I'm having a thought exercise with everybody here.
Well, it is fun to see how kids react to certain things that we either grew up with or things that we just simply love, and to see if they're at the right age to latch on to it. I mean, I love doing those experiments with my wife's brother's family. He has 3 kids. Their ages are around, I think, like 10, 7, and 4 right now, maybe 5 actually. But they love quite a few Hayao Miyazaki films. I've gotten them turned on to those, so that's at least exciting to see. So the youngest one, the boy, he loves both Ponyo and Transformers. Those are his things right now.
Yeah, and obviously, I think it depends on the kid as well. Like, and I might be able to get Andrew into some of that a little bit more. Sam has developed his own personality that is more and more getting away from my interest. He doesn't really care to watch movies at this point.
Okay.
I actually was just talking about this with women in session, actually, because they were asking me about getting the kids to watch movies. Sam loves to play outside, but he also loves reading. He reads way more than I do. He loves to read.
That's awesome.
He loves to play video games, but his video games are different than my video games. Like he loves playing on VR, for example.
Yeah.
So
I remember you mentioned that.
He has his own personality, and I don't want to force anything onto him, even when it comes to sports.
Not.
Like he's more into swimming. Like swimming is his sport right now, where I grew up playing hockey. So I love that he is simply forming his own person that isn't me. Despite how much he looks like me, and he is my mini me, but personality-wise, he's just becoming Sam. And that honestly excites me.
That's great. That's what you want. You want individuality out of them.
Exactly. He's forming his own identity.
So that way, if he were to come to you and say, Dad, I saw this awesome movie called The Day the Earth Blew Up, and you weren't the one to show him that. He found it on its own. That makes it even better, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he will still ask me about certain films. Sometimes, he still goes to the theaters. Like he's excited about Avatar. Like I will take him to see Avatar later this year.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Or Jurassic World. He's excited for the new Jurassic World movie. So like he'll still go to the movies with me from time to time, but he's not itching to just sit around and watch a movie all of the time. Like he just has his own singular things that he loves. And I love that. Like just love that he's forming his own person. And we'll see with Andrew. Maybe Andrew will be the cinephile of the two. I don't know.
Maybe he will. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But that's the fun. That's the fun.
I think that's the rule. You can't have 2 cinephiles in one family.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a hardened rule.
Yeah.
You only have 2. But yeah, and so I'm not forcing it on Sam right now. It's just kind of wait and see at this point.
Either way, this movie rocks. I might go see it again. I could easily see this one again.
I will probably anyway. Yeah, we got down a rabbit hole. Just to circle back to that original point is that I can't wait to see this again, and hopefully I can get the kids to sit down and watch it with me because I do think they'll like it. So
I'll probably take my wife. She's actually looking forward to it.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Anyway, The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie. It's really good. If you agree or disagree with anything we had to say, leave a comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us in sessionfilm@gmail.com. All right. I noted some time ago that we have a review of Snow White, Disney's remake, their live action remake. It's a remake, but it's not really live action. Sort of is.
I don't even know what to call it anymore.
Live action. Anyway, regardless of how you want to call it, we did a review of that. It was a really fun conversation, even though we're not very high on the movie, but we had a great time talking about it.
Absolutely.
Episode 629, the main show this week. We talk about 5 movies that we are pitching to Hollywood, animated movies that we want to see in live action, or at least movies that we think could transition to live action very well.
Absolutely.
That was a fun discussion. We also continued our Best Picture movie series with My Fair Lady, a movie that, oh boy, it might hold the crown as the Best Picture winner that does not hold up at all.
I think it's one of the worst Best Picture winners, actually.
Yeah, not good. So go and check that out. Really great show this week. There's going to be a new Women in Session coming soon. And I'm going to be on Women in Session soon. I'm not sure when that episode is going to drop. I'd have to go and look at the episode list. I think there's one more. Like the episode that comes out this week, I think is around costumes once again, if I'm not mistaken. And then next week, next Friday, will be my episode with them. So
all right. Looking forward to that one.
For all that. All right. With that said, everyone have a great weekend. Whatever you guys go out there and see. Is it the Jason Statham movie weekend? That's what's coming out this weekend, right?
There's a lot coming out this weekend, apparently. There's that. There's Death of a Unicorn, I think, comes out this weekend as well.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to Death of a Unicorn, yeah.
Yeah.
Heard some really great things about that one, so.
Yeah, we shall see.
But, I am a working man, so I got to go see myself a working man.
There you go.
So, all right. With all that said, everyone have a great weekend. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast. Oh, man. Porky and Daffy. Awesome.
Love them.
Awesome
Love them.
together.